So good morning, everyone, and welcome to the July meeting of the Western BCP Planning Committee. First of all, I'll hand over to the Democratic Services Officer and ask for the housekeeping notices and then information about apologies for absence and any substitute members.
Thank you, Chair. Please note that this meeting is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the Council website for a minimum of 6 months. The meeting may also be recorded or streamed for live or subsequent broadcast by members of the public, although ultimate discretion in this matter lies with the Chair. For those in the room, please note that if the fire alarm sounds, please exit the building by way of the nearest available signed fire exit route and make your way to the assembly point at the War Memorial in the gardens opposite the building. Finally, please ensure that background noise is kept to a minimum and that mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to a silent setting. For those in the room, this includes turning off microphones and turning the volume down completely on laptops. Thank you. Sorry, we've got 2 apologies for this meeting, Chair, from Councillor Jo Clements, Vice Chair, and from Councillor Peter Stidaway. We have no apologies notified to us, no substitute members notified to us.
Thank you very much. So before we start proceedings, I'll ask everybody in the room to introduce themselves. My name is Marion Le Pedvin. I'm councillor for Newtown and Heatherlands Ward, and I'm chair of this planning committee.
I'm Joe Salmon, councillor for Moordown Ward.
Oh, come on, yeah, Peter Cooper, councillor for Hamworthy.
John Challoner, councillor, Camford Cliffs Ward.
Karen Rampton, councillor Topham Branksome Woods Ward.
Gillian Martin, councillor for Boscombe West.
Thank you. And then officers and presenting officers up with us. We have
Sophia Dykes, planning officer. Monica Kwiatkowska, DM team leader.
Katie Harrington, development management manager.
Thank you. And we also
sorry.
Over to you.
Claire Johnston, Democratic Services.
Thank you. We also have joining us online the other presenting officer, Frances Summers, and I can actually see her on screen at the moment. So she will be coming for the second item. So first of all, have we got any declarations of interest among members on either of these items? No, if anything occurs to you as we're proceeding, feel free and please do mention it then, whenever you think of it. Next item is number 4, confirmation of minutes of the meeting on the 11th of June. So, is everybody happy with these, or are there any matters to raise? Councillor Salmon.
I'm happy with minutes. Just want to check. Are we core? We're only 5 councillors. Does that cut them up?
Oh, we're 6.
We 6.
Yeah, there's 6 councillors.
We're 6, and we are quorate.
6 with the chair. 6 with the chair.
Yeah, don't forget the chair. I should be upset. So, back to the minutes of June the 11th. Is everybody happy to accept these as a true record? Please, can somebody nod or say something? Thank you. Thank you. So those are accepted. I'll sign them in due course. So we move on to item 5, public issues. After the officer presentations, we'll hear any public speakers, people who've registered already, not speaking from the floor, and then any ward councillors, and then we'll move on to members. So we have 2 applications with us today. First of all, item 6A is 8 Brownsea Road. And Ms. Harrington would like to say something about this.
Chair, just to advise you that we have had a request to defer the application from a neighbour and objector. The reasons presented for the deferral were that the committee would be otherwise determining an application whilst there is a live complaint. There is currently a live stage 2 complaint that has been submitted. That the public register is incomplete, notably for formal representations, and a lack of ecological arboriculture evidence submitted, and some representations not being passed to specialist consultees. Now, for clarity, Chair, It is possible to determine application without, with a complaint in place. So the advice from the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman advise that there is no requirement for a local planning authority to delay taking an application to committee until a related complaint has been through the complaints process. The application process and the complaints processes are separate. A planning application can proceed to committee even if there is an ongoing complaint about it. In fact, complaints about planning applications are generally not considered by the Ombudsman until the council's made a decision on the application, as it is only then that any potential fault can be assessed. With regards to the alleged procedural errors, the officers have made available online in redacted form or otherwise any comments, representations that have been submitted. And regards to the allegation of a lack of ecological or arboricultural evidence, these are matters for consideration by the case officer dealing with the application to whether they are material to its assessment. And in that sense, my advice to you, Chair, that we do not defer because we are confident that we have not procedurally erred. However, it is a decision for the committee to make whether or not to defer this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Harrington. So it's up to us to decide whether we defer this application because of the complaint, but we have received advice from officers and wider that it is perfectly acceptable for us to proceed in the normal way to come to a decision, and the complaint will be adjudged on a completely separate process, irrespective of what conclusion we come to, whether to grant or refuse this planning application. So, Councillor Martin.
I think we should take the officer's advice and proceed.
Thank you. Any other? Councillor Challoner?
I think I've always been nervous of there being a live complaint, because if we go ahead and make a decision at committee now to approve this application, then that kind of stops the potential validity of that complaint then going through and actually having any kind of merit to be considered. So that's my concern.
Can you follow that, Ms Hamilton? I don't think that's the impression I got from what you read out that email.
Yeah, so the end point of any complaint submitted to the council is the local government ombudsman, and it's their advice that they're unlikely to look at any complaint unless the application is determined. So that's my advice to members.
Councillor Salmon.
I agree with John in effect, although I get that the ombudsman are almost going, we're not going to look at this complaint until it's done and dusted and you've made a decision. So just to be clear, the complaint is about the process of how the application's been handled thus far. So has the council taken a view that this complaint is utterly baseless and we just want to send it on to the ombudsman? Is that what we're being told? Or are we being told that it still needs to be looked at?
Ms Harrington, or?
Yes, sorry. Yes, the complaint is focused on procedural validation and technical concerns. So the council responded to stage 1 complaint, advising that the application was correctly validated and processed and not upheld this complaint. So there is no procedural matters for consideration.
Just to clarify, there is a stage 2 complaint in place which disagrees with the council response, and that is yet to be determined.
But we have had clear advice that it's quite acceptable and doesn't have any, the complaint and our decision are two independent things and don't have any impact on each other. Councillor Rampton.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Nonetheless, I do feel uncomfortable that there is a second stage complaint that hasn't yet been determined, and I would be more comfortable with not making a determination until that complaint was fully satisfied, whichever way it goes. Thank you.
But the advice we're having is that they're not dependent on each other. They are two independent processes. Councillor Salmon.
So just for clarification, the stage 2 of this complaint is still dealt with by the council. It's not gone to the ombudsman yet. I think probably the prudent thing is to err on the side of caution then and wait until the stage 2 complaint is dealt with. Once that's been dealt with, I feel much more confident going into that, because until we are absolutely certain as an institution, no, this process has been correct and we would be happy to defend it to the ombudsman, then why risk, as Councillor Chandler points out, let's say we go ahead with this application, we approve it, then the stage 2 finishes and goes, oh no, actually X, Y and Z were problems. That is a potential, that could happen. That is a risk we would be taking if we made a decision today. Why take that risk? I don't believe there's anything time critical where if we don't make a decision today, we're falling foul of taking too long to make a decision on the application or anything like that, are we? Is there any risk with delaying the decision?
So the question from Councillor Salmon, is there any risk if we delay the decision?
The risk would be, so it's out of time. We don't have an extension of time, so the applicant could appeal non-determination. And I think that's the major risk of this.
And how near to the time factor involved are we?
Chair, it's 9 days out of date.
So if it was to be deferred, it clearly would not be discussed, would not come back to committee within the operative time period.
No, Chair, because that's already gone. Yeah.
So, weighing against the points that some colleagues have made, we've also got the risk of being accused of non-determination by the applicant. So there's possibly a potential risk on both sides. And to me, that actually is the more serious risk as a planning committee than the other. Don't know whether the officers have any.
I think within that context, if we are, because we've not got another meeting in 9 days' time, if we defer, I think probably the risk of not making a decision is greater than the risk that this complaint is found at stage 2 to be upheld and we've done things wrong. That would be the way I'm tending towards. So if
Sorry, just to cut in there, it's 9 days over the deadline, so the deadline's gone, so it's not having to terminate in 9 days to meet that.
we are already over the deadline. All right, let's make a decision then. Let's make a decision. Let's go with the officer.
Okay, I've had definitely two councillors saying let's make a decision. That's my view as well. Can we take a vote on that? That we do not defer, that we go ahead and discuss this in the normal way and come to a conclusion today.
That's 1, 2, 3, 4 in favour of continuing.
Thank you. Those against? And abstention? One of each. But the decision of the majority is that we go ahead. That being the case, I'll hand over to the presenting officer, Sophia Dykes, to make the case. So a few minutes while the presenting officer gets her presentation on the screen for us.
Sorry about
Thank
the delay there. Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. The householder application before you today is at 8 Brantsley Road with the description of development reading: remove roof, add additional storey, erect extensions and remodel the existing dwelling with associated car parking, and the increase of the front boundary wall to 1.6 metres high and install a replacement sliding gate. The application site. Thanks. The application site is located on the northeastern side of Brownsea Road on the Sandbanks Peninsula and is currently occupied by a detached bungalow. The character of the area is residential with a varied mix in the size and design of dwellings. There's also a block of flats immediately adjacent to the site known as Wood Rising. The site is bounded by protected trees or TPOs to the side and rear, which contribute to the verdant character of the site and the surrounding area. The topography of the site slopes upwards towards the rear, where the rear garden is at a higher level than the front driveway. Here, we've got some photos of the site, the existing dwelling as viewed from the front and rear. The first two photos here show the relationship between the site and the neighbouring block of flats, Wood Rising, and the final photo shows the view from the garden of the site towards 10 Brownsea Road and 76 Banks Road. There's just a couple more photos here showing the relationship between the site and 12 Brownsea Road, where there's a private driveway separating the two properties as shown. This slide shows existing elevations. And here we've got the proposed elevations. Here are the proposed floor plans. The alterations would enlarge the property to 4 bedrooms. And here we have the existing and proposed site plans. The red dashed line on the proposed shows the footprint of the existing building. The proposal relates to alterations to the existing dwelling to include removal of the roof, add an additional storey, erect extensions and remodel the existing dwelling. The alterations to the roof to add an additional storey would result in the existing bungalow becoming a 1.5 storey dwelling with a basement level. The size and height of dwellings along this section of Brownsea Road are varied. To the southeast of the site is a 3-storey block of flats, Wood Rising, and to the northwest, a 3-storey dwelling at 12 Brownsea Road. It is also noted that 12 Brownsea Road was increased to a 3-storey dwelling from a 2-storey dwelling under a planning permission in 2018. Whilst this was determined under a differing local planning policy context, it is illustrative that such changes to height and massing have been accepted in the street scene. The height of the dwelling would increase by approximately 1.5 metres and would continue to be set below its immediate neighbours at 12 Brownsea Road and Wood Rising. It's therefore considered that the proposed increase in height would respect the character and appearance of the area and is acceptable in this context. Whilst it is accepted that the increase in massing is significant, it is considered that this is proportionate to the existing dwelling, with the chalet and roof design reducing the bulk so that the dwelling does not appear as a full 2-storey building. The massing bulk of the dwelling would continue to be notably less than its 2 immediately adjacent neighbours at 12 Brownsea Road and Wood Rising, and as such, it is considered that the bulk mass of the proposal is proportionate to the existing dwelling and reflects the character of the area. The footprint of the dwelling would minorly increase through the 3-metre single-storey rear extension and extension to the basement. Given their minor nature, this is considered acceptable. The proposals would materially change the visual appearance of the dwelling through its remodelling and use of modern materials. Considering the wider variety of designs, styles and materials seen throughout the street scene, the proposed design is considered acceptable and would respect the established and varied character of the area. The proposal also includes a new front boundary wall and sliding gate. The increase in boundary height is considered acceptable, considering boundary walls of this height are seen throughout the street scene of Brownsea Road, and the proposed gate would replace the existing one of a similar scale and is therefore considered acceptable. Overall, it is considered that the proposal would preserve the character and appearance of the area and would not result in unacceptable harm to the street scene in accordance with the relevant design policies. In relation to impact on neighbouring amenity, as per the assessment in my officer's report, the proposal would not result in unacceptable overlooking or harmful loss of privacy. Whilst the proposal does introduce new windows and openings and 2 balconies, these have been positioned to ensure they do not result in harmful overlooking. Furthermore, the presence of boundary treatments and the dense tree coverage provides sufficient screening between the site and the neighbours to the rear and towards Wood Rising to ensure privacy is retained. In reference to the image shown, the separation distance between the dwelling and number 12 and Wood Rising would remain as existing. The separation distance between the extended dwelling and number 10 Brownsie Road and 76 Banks Road would reduce by just 3 metres through the single storey rear extensions. At first floor level from the rear balcony, the separation distance between the extended dwelling and number 76 Banks Road would be 19 metres. Such distances are typical in a residential area of this context and therefore are considered appropriate and would not give rise to unacceptable privacy concerns. In relation to daylight and sunlight impacts, the proposed development is not considered to result in a material reduction in natural light to any neighbouring property. Whilst the massing and height of the dwelling will increase, this will continue to be set below its immediate neighbours, and any shading will be confined to the morning and early afternoon hours, and as such does not amount to harm to warrant refusal of the scheme. The proposal would not appear overbearing to any neighbour. Whilst the bulk, massing and height is increasing, the property will continue to be largely over the same existing footprint and will not be any higher than its immediate neighbours at 12 Brownsie Road and Wood Rising. Separation distances are sufficient for this context, and therefore the proposals would not appear overbearing. And lastly, the proposals would not harm the outlook of any neighbour. As such, the proposals would not harm any neighbouring amenity in compliance with PP 27 and Sound 5. In relation to highways and parking, the parking provision remains compliant with BCP's parking standards. The existing side access gate is proposed to be enlarged. It should be noted that this access is secondary and incidental to the dwelling. The proposal does not create a new principal highway access or materially alter neighbouring access arrangements. The narrow access drive would be a limiting factor to vehicles being able to turn into the site through the proposed gate. And given the primary parking provision on the frontage, it is not anticipated that vehicle use would significantly increase as a result of the proposals. No highway safety impacts have been identified, and BCP's highway officer raises no objection, subject to conditions. Protected trees are present on and around the site. An arboricultural assessment method statement and tree protection plan has been submitted by the applicant. This has been reviewed by BCP's tree officers, who raised no objections, subject to tree protection conditions. As such, subject to these conditions, the proposals would not harm protected trees. The site is in flood zone 1, but is at future risk of flooding. The application is supported by an appropriate flood risk assessment. There would not be an increase in flood risk vulnerability, as the proposal relates to alterations and extensions to an existing dwelling. Flood resilience measures are proposed, including water-resistant materials and raised electrical services. This mitigation is considered proportionate and acceptable in this context, and as such, the proposal would not result in unacceptable flood or drainage impacts. The development is exempt from the mandatory 10% biodiversity net gain requirement, as it is a householder application. A preliminary roost appraisal was submitted and reviewed by BCP's ecologists, who raised no ecological objections, subject to an informative regarding bats during construction. No significant harm has been identified to protected species, habitats, or ecological networks. Just to note from the addendum sheet for this application, an additional condition has been added in relation to trees, which would require a pre-commencement meeting. This would prevent any harm being caused to trees that might result from any other work being carried out in relation to the development. No harm has been identified. The proposal complies with the relevant local planning policies and is supported by internal consultees, subject to conditions. Therefore, the recommendation is for approval, subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dykes. So now we turn to registered speakers. Or shall I? According to the list, we have 2 registered objectors, Kirsty Fairchild and Chris Hopton. Are they both in the room? Or thank you. And if you'd like to come to the mic, and you have 5 minutes between you.
Hello, my name's Kirsty Fairchild and I live at 10 Brownsie Road. We made several objections to this application during the consultation period,
but the main objection I'd like to focus on is the proposed large double gates to the side and rear of 8 Brownsea Road. Point 1, the original application stated that these large double gates were to provide vehicle access. During the course of the application, this has now changed to pedestrian access due to multiple objections. My question to the committee is, if these gates are now intended only for pedestrian use, why is there a need for such large double gates when a pedestrian gate already exists? Point 2, I would also like the committee to satisfy itself that the correct ownership certificates were served, as our private driveway was not included within the application site. If this is not the case, I would respectfully ask, if our private driveway is not part of the application site and the proposal does not include it, what planning purpose do these large double gates actually serve? Point 3, highway safety. As you can see from the photo, I thought it was going to be a photo up. Okay.
Yes. It's been paused.
I would just like to show just how narrow and constrained our driveway is. This is the only vehicle access to our home, and all 4 adult members drive, so this driveway is in constant use. Should these large double gates ever be used for vehicle access, and a vehicle emerging from the side would have severely restricted visibility of a vehicle reversing either up or down the driveway. Likewise, a driver reversing along the driveway would have little or no opportunity to see a vehicle emerging until both drivers have already committed to their manoeuvre. Because we cannot turn at the top, we have to reverse either up or down every time. Point 4. The front of the application property already benefits from direct vehicle access onto Brownsea Road. It has generous off-road parking and an integral garage. As there is ample off-road vehicle access to the front and a side pedestrian gate to the rear, I would like to ask, for a single dwelling, are these large gates really necessary? Point 5. I appreciate that any future proposal to subdivide the plot would require its own planning application, and it is not before the committee today. However, I do ask members to consider that the construction of large double gates creates an access arrangement capable of facilitating future vehicle access, should such an application ever be made. That is why I believe it's important the committee carefully considers whether these gates are genuinely justified by the development that is before you today, and whether any planning benefit they may provide outweighs the additional highway safety concerns created on the only access to our home. A redevelopment of this house can proceed without these gates. My concern is whether these gates themselves are justified. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, members and committee, thank you. My home at 76 Banks Road sits directly below this site on a steep sandbank slope, and the proposal causes severe and unmitigated harm, privacy, daylight and land stability and ecological function. First, the scheme breaches the council's established 21-metre privacy guideline. The applicant admits to a separation of around 14 to 19 metres and proposes a 3-storey glass facade, dormier and balcony directly overlooking my primary bedroom, living room, garden and upper terrace. The existing relationship is a blank bungalow roofline with 0 windows. This proposal fundamentally changes that and conflicts with PP 27, Sand 5 and Sand 1. Second, the increased ridge height blocks an only remaining light corridor between the current low roof and the protected pine canopy. My home sits lower down the slope, so this creates a tunnelling effect. No BRE daylight sunlight assessment has been submitted. Third, the site's running sand geology and proximity of the protected Scott pines create a genuine land instability risk. No geotechnical report, route mapping or BS 5837 arboricultural impact assessment has been provided, despite clear requirements under PP 32 and the NPPF to assess risks to both the new and existing development. Fourth, the development cannot physically comply with the tree officer's conditions. Drainage cannot be placed anywhere on the plot without breaching the root protection areas, and the proposed 2.4 metre side gate requires excavation directly within the RPA. The AMS does not explain how demolition can occur safely beneath a live open reach wire with only 12 inches of clearance. Fifth, a live open reach drop wire spans the proposed access route. It already abrades the applicant's roof and is near its maximum safe span. Demolition and construction vehicles would pass directly beneath it, creating a foreseeable highway safety hazard under PP34. Finally, the site borders on an active ecological buffer. I have submitted time-stamped bat activity evidence showing nightly commuting and foraging along the boundary corridor. The applicant has provided no phase 2 surveys, no lighting assessment, no mitigation for bird strike or light spill from the proposed 3-storey glazing, contrary to PP33. Chair members, there are also planning harms. I now need to briefly explain procedural context because it directly affects the fairness and legality of determining the application today. The public consultation did not run correctly. The published end date was the 13th of May, but actually closed on the 12th of May, and the server-side error prevented representations. No site notice was displayed. No neighbour notification was issued to my home, the most directly affected property. Multiple formal representations, ecological, arboricultural.
Mr. Hopton, can I point out you're well over your time now, so please draw your comments to a close.
Got that much left.
Is that much okay?
So it's like literally 30 seconds, 45 seconds. Multiple formal representations, ecological, arboricultural, can't say that word, engineering, utilities and safety evidence were not published, not logged and not provided to consultees. The ecologist, the tree officer issued assessments without seeing key evidence, while the applicant's late rebuttal was published and circulated. Mandatory validation requirements relating to red line boundary, access land, certificate B and notice 1 were not addressed. These issues form part of stage 2 corporate complaint submitted Monday, which remains active, unresolved and uninvestigated. Determining an application while...
Sorry, you really must stop now. You've had well over your time limit. Thank you. So we now move on to the next speaker, who is Darrell Howes on behalf of the applicant.
Good morning, members. First of all, may I ask for the street scene image to be shown on display, please? We at Darrell Howes Planning Consultancy fully support this application and endorse the officer's recommendation to approve. As you have heard, this application is a wholly appropriate and validated planning application, meeting the validation checklist requirements for the application to be registered, and has gone through the process correctly to enable your planning officers to present a recommendation to you today. The existing dwelling is tired and lacks the presence that is afforded by most of the surrounding buildings in this part of the street scene. Those buildings include a 3-storey flatted accommodation to the side known as Wood Rising. On this opposite side to the proposal, there is number 12, which is a 3-storey dwelling with a full height gable and on the front elevation, and offers an elevated balcony over the garage. Opposite the application site, there are large blocks of flats, either purpose-built or converted. In this context, In this context, my client merely seeks to extend their home and replace the roof with habitable accommodation within. The overall design shall be of a chalet bungalow of quality material and windows that allow good natural light to penetrate within. The proposed roof shall increase the ridge by approximately 1.5 metres. However, that will be below the ridge levels of the neighbouring properties. If you refer to the photograph on the screen, in fact, the proposed ridge will be roughly in line with the eaves of number 12, so that cannot be deemed to be harmful or overly dominant in the street scene. The distance of separation from the front elevation of the building to those on the opposite side of Brownsea Road is unchanged at 32 metres. No harmful overlooking shall occur. Facing towards Wood Rising, there shall be a new dormer window from the first floor study. However, the view shall be over the front garden aspect of Wood Rising and not towards neighbouring windows by virtue of the proposed roof, blocking any lines of sight. There is no material harm to number 12, as the windows on the side elevation of the proposed chalet bungalow are secondary in nature. To the rear, at number 76 Banks Road, there is a first floor bedroom window on the side elevation that will be visible from the applicant's proposed balcony. However, your planning officer and I agree that whilst some mutual outlook shall occur, the actual harm is not sufficient to warrant refusal of a planning application, especially as the visibility of first floor windows of neighbouring properties in this part of the Sandbanks area is part of the character of that zone. Furthermore, the proposed balcony is accessed from the master bedroom and shall not be used as for parties or anything like that, merely for the applicants to enjoy the rear garden view similar to that of a first floor window. Much debate has been made out about the adjacent driveway to the side of the application site which serves number 10. The applicants have a legal right to use that driveway. Matters of this legal right to use the driveway is not a planning consideration before the local planning authority, so should have no impact or no influence on the outcome of the application. The access on the side boundary abutting the driveway is to widen, the access on the side boundary of the driveway shall be widened to facilitate the needs of the applicants. The proposed widening of the existing vehicular access at the front of the site is supported, and the amendment to the front boundary treatment will facilitate ease of vehicular movement in and out of the site. In terms of its appearance, the resultant work shall be consistent with others seen within nearby properties. To conclude, and as reported, the proposed development is fully supported by the highway officer, the tree officer, the ecology officer, and the coastal erosion risk management officer, and of course your senior planning officer today. My client is happy with the conditions imposed, so we request a planning committee grants planning consent today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Howells. We have no ward councillors registered to speak, but of course one of the ward councillors is a member of this committee, Councillor Challoner, so he will speak as a member of the committee and no doubt as a ward councillor as well, if he is so minded. Ms Sykes or any of the planning officers, are there any issues from what we've heard so far that you want to follow up on?
Chair, there are quite a number of issues that have been raised. I think we'll leave it to members to, if they would like to ask any questions.
Thank you. So that leads us on to questions from members. Councillor Cooper.
Call me kind of a numpty, but all the impact assessments, the sunlight, the earth and stuff like that, they're saying that they've not been done. One of the guys, so why is that, and what? So I'd just like some clarity on that, please. If that's all right.
Sophia, can you show the plan view showing surrounding dwellings? So the BRE, we don't ask for daylight sunlight assessments for every application, and because essentially as officers we can apply the BRE's rule of thumb in terms of daylight sunlight. Again, for clarity, there's a separate issue called right to light, which is a much more stricter test which sits outside of planning, and the bar for whether harmful daylight sunlight would occur is fairly low for the BRE. So with the BRE, there are two key measurements. One is the 45-degree angle and the horizontal and vertical plane, and 25-degree angle. Now, given the distance between the properties, no assessment was required, because if you apply those rules of thumb, then there is that they don't transect key windows, etc., or would result in significant loss of daylight to the garden. And that's why a report was not requested, as it was not required for detailed assessment.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just add a bit more in terms of sunlight daylight assessment. So looking at this image, number 8, the sunlight impact or overshadowing, it would be as existing. Only what we would be assessing is the increase in height, which is 1.5 metres. That would only be where any additional shading would come from. And given the orientation of the site, as existing, there'd be a bit of shading in the morning and early afternoon hours. It would be very minorly increased, nothing to amount to harm that would warrant refusal of the scheme.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor.
So highways are totally happy with it, I think, and all of the stuff about the gate looking from paragraph 57 to 64, that has been addressed. But we did hear quite a lot of objections on other grounds that I think relate to PP 27, PP 27, the amenity. And I just wanted to check, is this one where there was any kind of tilted balance and anything that did look like it does conflict with PP 27? Any subjectivity in there at all? Any wiggle room?
Yeah, there wouldn't be a tilted balance here, given it's a householder, so we're not weighing up any additional housing or anything like that. But yeah, as per my assessment, no harm has been found in regard to PP 27 and SAND 5, which is kind of the echoing design policy. So yeah, no harm has been identified.
Thank you. Any further questions, Councillor?
Thank you, Chair. I've seen reference to SAND 1 to 5 about some various issues or objections that have been raised, including that relates to increased intensification of the site. Are we assured that all of the SAND policies have been explored and this is compliant with all of those? I'm sure you'll say yes, but I'm asking on behalf of people who've raised those objections just so that it is voiced in its fullest.
Yes, it's been fully assessed in regard to the relevant SAND policies, which is SAND 1, SAND 3, SAND 4, SAND 5. Yes, it has been assessed in line with those, and also the relevant policies from the pool local plan. And yeah, I am satisfied that they comply with the Sandbanks neighbourhood plan as well as the pool local plan.
Just a quick follow-up on that, because reference is made by one objector with regards to a nearby site being refused using one of the SAND, I can't remember if it's 3 or 4, in terms of the increased intensification of the site, and that wouldn't apply on this occasion.
I can't say that I've looked at that case specifically, so I'm not sure I can make further comment on that. But as I said, I have assessed the scheme in relation to the relevant policies, and I haven't found harm to warrant refusal of the scheme.
Yeah, as members, you're all aware, each application must be determined its own merits, and so the officer report for that refusal would explain why it was refused on this basis. But as Sophia said, that we are satisfied that the application accords with those policies.
Councillor Rampton.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just I'm a bit worried about this side gate, this proposed gate. Am I correct that it was originally 3 metres and it's been reduced to 2.4 metres? And 2.4 metres still seems wide enough for a vehicle, albeit a fairly small vehicle maybe. But if it's not for vehicular access, why was it only reduced by such a small amount? Do we know?
Yeah, so I'll add a bit more context on this gate. So the agent or applicant has suggested the widening is necessary to, for example, transport their water sports material into the garden. Highways have considered this a valid enough reason. But if James Larson is available, I will just defer to him for some confirmation on that if you're online, James.
Yes, hello, members. So the side gate, as the applicant or the agent has suggested, is for incidental purposes to facilitate movement of water sports equipment and a trailer into the rear garden, which would seem to be an acceptable incidental use. There's no other sort of change of use planned, and the side access is actually only 2.8 meters wide, which is very narrow, as we can see from the pictures. and would actually be a limiting factor as to being able to actually turn vehicles into the site. And I just don't think that there's a likelihood of vehicles really driving into the site from that access, particularly as there is a sort of primary access on the frontage, which you know, the proposals are actually trying to facilitate increased or better use of the frontage for vehicle use. So, you know, we don't have any highway concerns with the side access. Obviously, there is an existing access there, so there has been previous use of the access for residential purposes.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. Any further questions? Councillor Martin.
Just wanted to clarify that that private drive there, where the gates are going to go, is that jointly owned by the both properties 8 and 10, or is it for exclusive use of 10? Does it belong to number 10, or does it belong to number 8, or have they got an easement?
Can we have some clarification on that?
Yeah, so issues of ownership and rights to access to land is not really a planning matter. So it's not for us to know or understand that.
But the agent did say that they have legal rights to pass over that, whatever the actual ownership is, that they are legally allowed to use.
They've already got an easement.
That's what the agent has told us, so that's all I can go by myself. I don't know whether officers, well, they don't seem to have got anything further to add. If there are no further questions, we'll move on to debate. Unless there's anything the officers still want to add from what's been said. No, thank you. So, on to debate. Any thoughts on this matter? Councillor Challoner.
Thank you, Chair. I'm often concerned about the impact of overlooking when new buildings or additional stories are added to a building. Is that 14 metres acceptable in this location? And that's
sounds like a question, not debate now.
Well, yeah, no, actually, I'm now putting that out to other committee members to say, are you comfortable with that as a distance, basically? Because we've seen instances where, again, this is one where it might be considered a little bit subjective around what is an acceptable distance to facilitate and to allow to be imposed in that area.
Yeah. Can I just confirm the 14 metres is ground floor extension, not first floor? Am I right?
Yes, this one. Sorry, ask the question again, Chair.
The 14 metres Councillor Shannon has referred to, that's the ground floor extension. It's not first floor. If I've got it right, am I right?
Yeah, that's correct. And is it what's the distance on the upper floor?
Yeah, sorry, it just confirms. So it's 19 metres from the master bedroom at the second story height to the rear of number 76, and 14 metres you're referring to is at the furthest point, the single story rear extensions.
So, debate. Anyone want to start the ball rolling? Oh, Councillor.
I guess I'm in two minds. I don't think there is anything to object to on this one in terms of planning policy beyond PP 35. No, not PP 35. I've got that wrong. The amenity one. PP 27. So yeah, from 46 to 56 in the report, I understand how the officer has gone through and addressed all of the concerns about the impact on amenity, and they've done so in a very objective way. But I think the reason we've got us on the committee, democratic representatives and all of that, is for when that objective pre-analytic vision misses the holistic picture of what this development would look like. I hear what Councillor Chandler says about the overlooking and so forth, about the loss of sunlight. That would be the only reason I have to object. If others felt minded to propose objecting on the grounds of PP 27, I would be tempted to support. But beyond that, I cannot see any reasons to refuse this. I'd be interested to hear from others, especially Councillor Chandler, as it is his ward. I would be almost guided by him on this.
Councillor Chandler, you've been put in the hot seat.
Not for the first time, Chair. Thank you. It's a difficult one because the nature of this locality is at times quite compact and dense, and my concerns are still around the potential overlooking and going back to the light that was also raised by Councillor Cooper, and I think that the committee would have to be satisfied that they are outweighed by the benefits of allowing this development to go ahead. I'm still in two minds.
Thank you. When I went to look at the site, actually looking at the current bungalow in context, because other properties around have been redeveloped or replaced in some cases, actually the existing bungalow at number 8, as it stands, actually almost looks out of place to me because of the developing street scene, and therefore visually and certainly from the street scene, I think actually it would blend in extremely well. I don't think the additional height, again in context, given all the relative positions of the neighbouring buildings and also the tree cover, and I know tree cover can go, but they're TPO'd, so unlikely. I don't think there's any that there will be much, if any, effect on overlooking or light that doesn't exist already. So, speaking personally, I would be happy to go ahead. The side gate, looking at the driveway, it would be very difficult. I think I would find it impossible, but there are better drivers than me to manoeuvre up that narrow sideway and swing into the side gate, even given that it's might be enlarged. And I'm not sure what the harm would be if people did, since there are rights to drive for number 8 residents to drive over that side area. I'm well, I certainly want to do it, but if they did, I'm not sure what the harm would be, apart from possibly knocking into walls and damaging their car. But that, that's not a planning issue. And so I would be happy to propose that we go ahead with this one and approve it. But there's more debate to be had, I'm sure. Councillor Martin?
Councillor Chandler's said about the 14 metres. I had to convert that into feet because I don't work in I can't visualise in metres, but it's nearly 50 feet, it's 47 feet roundabout, just doing the rough maths. And that to me is quite a distance, my own garden's 32 feet, so I'm sort of thinking, yeah, I can visualise that. And that's quite a way away, yeah. It's quite sort of normal sort of distance. And it's even more from the upper floor. It's another quarter again, so it's around about 60 feet-ish, yeah, which is quite long, yeah. It's quite a distance. Yeah.
Councillor Challoner?
I suppose it's a kind of a debate point that leads to a question. With regards to this side access gate, are we able to condition for it to be slightly smaller, so just to completely remove fears around vehicular access? Now, if it's a trailer, then that can be made to fit whatever size. I'm just thinking, is that something that we could add, or are we going into the kind of realms of detail that we really shouldn't be?
Yeah,
Do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, I can see where the logic in you seeking to have it reduced to reduce your concerns. However, there has to be a planning reason for an imposition of any conditions, and I think we're struggling to provide a sound justification for that, unfortunately.
Councillor Cooper?
Yeah, I mean, I can't see really much to object to. There's a few things that jump. The side entrance, I think, as a paddler and a kayaker, I can understand why they want it that size, the angle of a large kayak. So that to me is not an issue. I think neighbours would sort out access and in a friendly way. You know, we've got places in Hamworthy which have very similar access issues, and we don't get a lot of issues on those. The things that's just niggling in the back, and no, the guy mentioned, sorry, your name, about a bat survey and movement of nature across the back, and just, you know, want to be assured that that's not an issue that we've overlooked, because as a council I've worked on some things that have been overlooked, and that's not good stuff. So. But apart from that, I've got no objection to it at all.
Okay,
I
good.
apologise to those who.
Yeah, I'll just say in regards to bats, so a preliminary roost appraisal was submitted and was reviewed by our ecologist. That report was undertaken by, you know, qualified person, and that didn't suggest any further surveys were needed. So yes, we're satisfied it complies with the policy, and our ecologist has no objection to this.
Okay, so I propose that we approve this application. That has not been seconded as yet, but I hope it might be. Thank you, Councillor Martin, for seconding.
Yeah.
So if there's no further debate, we've got the motion. It's been seconded that we approve this application.
Now I can jump in with Chair, also the condition in the amendment sheet.
Yes, with conditions, including the amendment condition about the tree protection and that sort of thing. So if you're happy to approve, will you vote now?
That's 1, 2, 3, 4 in favour.
Against? Abstain?
And 2 abstentions.
So that is carried. Thank you very much. So we'll be moving on to item 6B, but allow a short pause for handover of officers. Thank you. It looks as though we're ready to proceed with item 6B. We have the presentation already on screen in front of us. So, Miss Summers, if we can carry on, over to you. Thank you.
Brilliant. Firstly, can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Bit quiet.
It is a bit quiet.
Bit quiet. I'll try and speak up. That's not like me. I'm normally too loud. Well, hello everyone. I'm Frances Summers. I'm a senior planning officer at BCP. Firstly, apologies from me for not being there in person today, but hopefully me being online will do. So this application relates to the community hub area of allocated site UE2. It seeks to vary condition 1 of the reserved matters that relates to the outline permission for the development of land north of Bearwood, Magna Road, and Knighton Lane in Poole. So if I just put the site into context, we're in the Bearwood and Merley ward, and we've got, hopefully, I don't know if you can see my arrow, can you? I'm just going to...
Yes, we can.
Thank you, Chair. So we've got Wimborne up to the northwest, we've got Merley, sort of northwest, Broadstone down here, and Bearcross here. So this site, it was allocated in the Poole local plan that was adopted in 2018, and subsequently an outline plan and permission was granted for around 650 homes, and then a reserved matters application followed for phase 1 in 2022. Phase 1 comprises of, amongst other things, the community hub building, the retail units and the office units. And this is what this scheme relates to today. It's just this section of phase 1. It's a greenfield site, so it's currently being built out. It's a construction site. We don't have a community hub built on it yet. So I don't have any photos. It's just a construction site at the minute. But in detail, the application seeks to amend the wording of one of the plans for the community hub to remove reference to a badminton pitch. It also seeks to reduce the height of the roof pitch, remove stairs and mezzanine floor and make some changes internally. Increase the size of the outdoor space and areas of soft landscaping associated with this community hub. Add some additional trees into the central car parking area and enlarge the bin storage and plant storage that relates to this retail unit. There's 2 visitor spaces, car parking spaces within the northern lay-by up here that have been replaced by a loading bay for deliveries, and then there's a path that will lead to the retail unit. And the scheme also requires or seeks to remove the requirement to provide BREEAM rating of very good and provide energy efficiency through other means. So I'll just go into a little bit more detail then. The height is proposed to reduce by 3 meters. As you can see here, this is the previously approved elevation, and this is the proposed elevation. And there's a few aesthetic changes there, as you can see too. But essentially, it's a reduction of 3 meters in height. There's also a change to the footprint, and it does make the building smaller. So it leads to around about 157 square meters less internal floor space. But looking at the space provided, so this again was the previously approved, and this is the proposed. The actual usable space within the hall remains pretty much the same. So the previously approved was around about 162 square meters, and what is proposed is around about 162.5 square meters, so around about the same. The reason there was more internal floor space in the previously approved one was because it included that mezzanine floor, and it was a slightly bigger building. So looking at the space, for me, logically, it seems that it would be a good space for community groups like choirs, band practice, informal sports groups, cadets, nurseries, especially because they're also proposing a fenced-off garden area here to the south and some soft landscaping to the north that weren't included in the original scheme. So obviously you've got a fenced-off external area that's good for like toddler groups and nurseries and cadets and things like that. So there's also the minor change to the bin store. Basically, the retail units there require a bigger bin store, and so that's been expanded to include that. And so, just to go through the sort of planning arguments for and against, well, there's no harm identified, and in terms of policy compliant, everything is that's proposed is policy compliant. As this site is a allocated site, it has a specific policy relating to it in the pool local plan, and that's PP 10. Part A to N of that policy also apply, as well as this specific part on UE2 itself. The only part of that policy that relates to this scheme is this word in here: a community hub that forms the part of the community, should be provided. So it's compliant with this policy. With regards to policy PP 26 relating to sports provision and community facilities, well, the facility isn't built yet, so we could look at part 1 and look at it as a new facility. And if that's the case, well, this scheme should provide a community facility, and it does, or continues to do so. If we were to class this as an existing facility, because it's got permission, even though it's not built out, parts 2 and 3 of this policy would apply. If we look at part 2, the criterion are all statements, so that means only one of these statements needs to apply. And part A is compliant. The replacement provision of equivalent or greater quality and quantity is provided in a suitable location, well, yeah, the community facility isn't lost. It remains in this proposal. Parts B and C relate to a loss, and like I say, this doesn't lose anything, so they don't apply. And again, with part 3 of this policy, that relates to a loss. I have consulted with community within the council, and they support the application. With regards to the sports provision in particular, Leisure do object to the loss of potential for badminton, although they specifically state that they want a play area that allows local people to take part in physical activity, which they can often walk to, and a place that offers a more friendly local vibe than like a more formal sports hall. There's no requirement for sports use within the community building itself in any of the previous permissions or in policy itself. And you please note that a formal mugger and a play park have been provided elsewhere on the site, but also less informal sports, such as what Leisure seem to be wanting, could take place here still. Furthermore, Badminton England have stated that there's lower participation within badminton in pools than average, and though it would be nice to encourage this use, the hall doesn't preclude informal sports from taking place. And removing the words badminton pitch from the drawings and reducing the height allows for a more flexible use, which is exactly what policy PP10 sets out to achieve. So finally, in terms of policy, in regard to reducing the BREEAM criteria, policy PP 37 applies, and that requires commercial buildings of this size to meet a very good BREEAM rating. Given the scheme can achieve energy efficiency or reduced carbon footprint through other means, not so specific as BREEAM, which requires the full fit out of the building, that can be conditioned, and we can deal with this through a different mechanism, essentially, ensure that it still reduces its carbon footprint as much as possible. There was a design code that was conditioned through the outline application and then approved. And the design code, I've been through it, and there's no evidence of need for any size. There's no evidence of need for anything else within the community building. Apart from that, it's 2 stories in height. Well, it is the equivalent of, or it remains the equivalent of. It's still a landmark building, as you can see from its architecture, which I showed you earlier. And it's still got an active frontage, so you can access the site from here and here. So it's still got that active frontage, which is what the design code was really seeking to have. In terms of compliance with previous permissions, then, the description of development for the outline required community uses of D1 and D2. Well, you'd be aware that the use classes have changed, and that now falls into use class F2, which is, amongst other things, a hall or meeting place for the principal use of the local community, which is what's proposed. So it's compliant with that. And in terms of conditions, again, all that's specified in conditions is that a community hall is provided, so it complies with the previous conditions too. In terms of obligations, then, there was a section 106 supporting the outline application, which required no less than 360 square metres of gross internal floor space. I can't find any evidence as to where that particular size has come from. But anyway, that was in the first legal obligation. This was then varied through a deed of variation to refer to internal and external space. So that 360 or no less than 360 square metres now refers to internal and external floor space. And the proposal in front of us leads to around about 400 square metres of internal and external floor space. So it complies there as well. So yeah, it accords with policy. We're here to positively plan development and approve proposals that accord with policy without delay. Removal of the wording badminton pitch from the community hall is compliant. Nothing restricts the use of the hall as to a badminton pitch. There's no evidence of need, so this is compliant. Reducing the height of the roof pitch, well, the design code states it should be 2 stories in height, and it is equivalent of 2 stories in height, about 8 meters high. The reduction in the size of the community hall building, the size still remains compliant with section 106 and deed of variation. In terms of the change to the bin storage to include plant storage, it's policy PP 27 compliant, waste have no comments. With regards to changing visitor spaces and loading bays, policy compliant again, and highways don't object. And with regards to changing the BRIA, it's perfectly satisfactory as they can provide energy efficiency in alternative ways which can be conditioned. So essentially, no harm's been identified. The new design is a benefit as it's a better design for the community. This is clear from the same size usable hall, but now complemented by the external garden areas. And the design is clearly more preferable, as it can be seen by the fact that the proposal is before us. The applicant is trying to find someone to take over the building, but no one's interested because it's too prescriptive. The new design allows for that outdoor space, which is more preferable to like toddler groups, scouts, as I've said. Another benefit is the increased soft landscaping, the trees in the car park, and the footpath to the retail unit. The internal changes can be done outside of the planning system anyway. There's no statutory consultee objections, and therefore the scheme is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have some speakers registered. First of all, we have an objector, Chris Wheel from Camford Magna Parish Parochial Church Council.
Good morning, everyone. As I said, my name is Chris Wheel, and I'm representing St Barnabas Church Bearwood and the Camford Magna Parochial Church Council. But I'm not speaking just for St Barnabas, but for the whole of the new Camford Vale community as we see it, about the proposed reduction in the size of the new community centre. I want to explain why we are all so concerned. First, the reduced size will have a significant impact on community facilities. Taylor Wimpey says it is in discussions about the community building with potential occupiers, but claims there is a limited market appetite for a badminton court because it is too specific and restrictive. But this building is not intended just to be a badminton court. The amendments substantially reduce not only the size of the facility, but the usefulness as a whole. The hall is significantly changed in dimensions. The meeting room mezzanine is removed entirely, and the kitchen is now reduced to a size smaller than many domestic kitchens, and wheelchair access becomes a lot more convoluted. Taylor Wimpey claims it has spoken to potential occupiers, but any consultation was wholly inadequate. As of last Friday, the 3rd, Taylor Wimpey had not contacted either the Bearwood Community Association or us at St Barnabas. Given our local involvement, we would have expected one or both organisations to be involved in discussions about management and operation. Our second objection is the reduced size will significantly affect the building's flexibility and amenity, not only for support the sports. The officers suggest that a badminton court will be too restrictive. We don't understand how shrinking dimensions of the hall and removing the meeting room, ideal for smaller groups such as book clubs and committees, can be described as improving flexibility. The shape of the hall now prevents recreational activities for different ages, including pickleball and short mat bowls. This conflicts with the officer's assertion that, I quote, there is nothing to preclude sports uses from taking place, and that the change, quote, merely makes badminton more difficult because of its reduced height. In practice, pickleball, short mat bowls and badminton would be impossible. These courts are 13.4 metres long and the short mat bowls requires 13.7 metres. These activities would be unsafe in a hall with a scale dimension of 15 metres long, so therefore removing that opportunity. And paragraph 24 of the officer's report states that the hall's height is contrary to the original intention because it doesn't provide flexibility for the community's evolving needs. We question how a reduction in height can provide greater flexibility. Our third objection is that the severely reduced facility would seriously curtail wider community use. It would make the centre less attractive for parties, celebrations, lunches for retired residents and other local activities, particularly given the severely reduced size of kitchen. Finally, I need to place on record our concerns about process. Taylor Wimpey originally submitted a non-material amendment application in October 25 for these significant changes, yet this is not listed in your agenda pack. Given their scale, it's unclear why a full application was not submitted then. It gives the appearance of an attempt to slip it under the radar. Furthermore, we have major concerns about predetermination. In its February letter, Taylor Wimpey states that a meeting was held with the case officer in November 25 to explain and discuss the amendments. It also says in that letter that during the meeting, the changes were agreed as acceptable to the local planning authority. This gives the impression that the outcome was being predetermined, which is deeply concerning, given that the community had not been consulted. In conclusion, these radical changes appear designed simply to reduce the cost of the building while substantially reducing its value to the whole community. We therefore ask the committee to recognise the significant impact of these changes and refuse it, requiring Taylor Wimpey to comply with the original permission and provide a facility of real value to Camphor Vale and Bear Wood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wheel. And now, on behalf of the applicant or supporters, Sarah Hockin, who is the applicant. Maybe on behalf of the applicant.
Good morning, Chair and members. My name is Sarah Hockin and I'm speaking on behalf of Taylor Wimpey in support of this application. The amendments before you solely relate to the approved community hub within phase 1 of the development. Importantly, this application does not seek to remove the community hub or reduce its approved uses. Instead, it seeks to ensure that both the community and the retail facilities can be successfully delivered, occupied and operated for the benefit of residents. A key element of the proposal relates to the approved community hall. Since reserve matters approval was granted, we have engaged with a number of potential occupiers and operators. Unfortunately, there has been very limited interest in the building in its current approved form, with feedback indicating that a hall designed around a dedicated badminton court is too restrictive and does not provide the flexibility expected of a modern community facility. The proposed amendments do not reduce the community provision. Instead, they remove the specific badminton court reference and creates a more flexible space with increased outdoor area, capable of accommodating a much broader range of community activities and events. This significantly increases the likelihood of securing an occupier and ensuring that the facility is well used by the community. And only this week we've had interest from a local nursery wanting to take this on. Members will also be aware that the flexibility in the delivery of the community hub has already been recognised through the Section 106 deed of variation and the supporting NMA to vary the condition wording. This application before you follows the same principle. It seeks to secure delivery rather than diminish the community offer. The application also delivers improvements through additional landscaping, including increased outdoor space around the community hall and additional landscaping within the parking area. The application also seeks to resolve an operational requirement for the retail unit. Through our discussions with the planned occupier for the retail facility, it has become clear that suitable servicing arrangements and dedicated refuse storage are essential if the unit is to be occupied and remain viable, and in its current form it does not provide enough refuse storage. Therefore, the bin store is particularly important. Without this bin store, there is significant risk that the occupier will not proceed, which would place the delivery of this important local facility at risk. The proposed loading bay is equally necessary to enable deliveries and day-to-day use of the the retail unit. Together, these facilities provide the basic infrastructure that any retailer would reasonably require. Ultimately, this application is about securing delivery. It retains the approved community and retail uses and improves the surrounding environment and provides the infrastructure necessary for a viable retail unit and creates a more flexible community hall that is better aligned with occupier requirements. For these reasons, and consistent with the flexible approach already accepted through the Section 106 deed of variation and the NMA, we respectfully ask members to support the officer recommendation to approve the application. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. And lastly, we have two of the ward councillors, Councillor Marcus Andrews and Councillor David Brown.
Thank you. Taylor Wimpey made an application to significantly reduce the size, alter the shape and amenity of the proposed community centre on the new Canfield Vale estate. The application seeks to reduce the height of this roof and remove the badminton pitch from the plans because the developer has found limited interest for this building. There is some vague reference in the report that in October 2025, an amended section 106 has already dealt with the floor size reduction, and amazingly, it allowed the outside site area to be included in the floor space. This goes against the whole purpose of the community hall for several hundred dwellings, say 2,500 new residents. Is Taylor Woodrow now marketing its houses, saying they are twice the size of the actual dwelling by including the garden? Section 106A does allow the local planning authority to modify an obligation if it would serve its purpose equally well if modified. How does a 40% drop in the size tick the box? Indeed, until I queried the October 25 document, it wasn't even on our website. It was only uploaded yesterday. But the October deed didn't deal with the headroom, hence particularly the application in front of you today. The use of the community halls for recreational sports allows for local people to take part in physical activity, which they can often walk to, and offers a more friendly local vibe, reducing isolation, increasing activity, reducing car activity, etc. BCP Leisure say in their objection that there should be the incorporation of a badminton court size. They also say it includes the opportunity for other sports. They say it would be a shame to miss out on a new local sporting opportunity if this option was not made available. Badminton England, in relation to pool court provision back in 2022, was as follows. An era with higher levels of activity than normal, badminton participation in contrast is lower than average. There is the opportunity to develop more participation if the badminton infrastructure exists. The quality of the courts in pool is slightly below the national average quality threshold. Halls with a high headroom, typically several metres or higher, are essential for sports involving high trajectory balls, aerial manoeuvres, vertical nets. These multi-purpose spaces are commonly used for a wide variety of year-round athletic activities. The most popular sports that can be played in these facilities include, as well as badminton, volleyball, handball, basketball, indoor cricket, indoor tennis, indoor football, gymnastics. These cannot be done with a lower headroom. More fundamentally, as regards Taylor Woodrow's claim, no one wants the hall of the original size required. None of the ward councillors were asked their view, nor were potential partners like the First School or St Barnabas Church. And the application was on the point of being allowed by officers until my colleague David Brown called it in. Taylor Woodrow have not supported their claim of no interest with proof. Shall I say marketing? We were told just a few minutes ago they did consult with people. Equally, we heard prior to that they haven't consulted with one of the major partners in the area, St Barnabas Church. I share the objectors' major concerns that the proposed changes for the already minimum facilities would further reduce the capacity of the building for the new community. BCP Council wants to create vibrant communities, and one of the best ways is to have a focal point for any community. The proposal reducing 40% of the capacity of the building is significant. Also, the layout is badly designed now, not accommodating the disabled. The kitchen has been reduced to a galley kitchen, in my view, and it has no serving hatch to the main hall. Crazy. The hub, as originally envisaged in size and height, is a fundamental part of the original scheme, and indeed was an argument set forward to support the development. Suggestion now is to reduce it to a size that makes it almost impossible for new residents to use. There is mention of no prospect for badminton use. As stated already, that's not an argument. There are other sports, plus numerous other things, amateur dramatics, yoga, dancing lessons. Can the committee recognise this application is what it is, namely a clear attempt by a developer to reduce their costs, and possibly the next to have an excuse to get out of it completely by saying it's now too small and because a larger hall is required? But hey, there was another change slipped in under the provision of section 106A last year and not highlighted in the report. If you want to look it up, it's on page 59 of the supplemental agenda. See paragraph 5. Namely, the number of houses to be completed before the hub has to be available for use is up from 300 to 500. Why? We were not consulted as ward councillors. In my mind, that creates about a 2-year delay, and we'll see residents now having to drive from this new estate to other halls along Magna Road, creating congestion. It's gridlock probability. Was BCP Transport asked for their input due to the ramifications of the massive relaxation? But you will be told you can't do much about the size reduction because that's already been agreed with the Section 106A deed. It's annoying that in the autumn of last year, ward councillors were not consulted on this either, nor were BCP Leisure from reading their objection to the actual application, nor, I guess, BCP Transport. It was slipped under the radar, as somebody said. Well, it's more like we've given the keys to Taylor Woodrow to our radar station. Please refuse this application. Bearwood residents want a proper community hub, and sooner, not later. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As ward councillor, I called this planning application in for the reasons as stated in the report in front of you. I have particular issue in your report around paragraph 4, where it talks about the applicants found limited market appetite for a building with a badminton pitch, too specific and restrictive. I just ask you to challenge what evidence there is of that, because frankly, to say there's no interest, I'd say is complete rubbish. And I speak not just as a ward councillor, as many of you know, with all due respect to the applicant and the planning officer, I've been involved in the running of community halls for over 20 years. I've been a trustee at Bearwood Community Centre and Kinston Community Centre. Badminton has always been popular at those centres. There's always been demand. A group at Kinston actually left due to rent increases and then couldn't find anywhere else to form. So there is local demand for badminton provision. And to say that they need to reduce the size, to me, having been involved in community halls, if you reduce the size, you reduce the flexibility, you reduce the demand. You know, it's just seems bonkers to think it will go the other way. So I see no evidence to support the applicant's assertion. For example, as mentioned, there's been no approach to the busy and successful local Bearwood Community Centre, which is growing in demand. And I've often advocated that they could actually operate this hall as a satellite unit to cope with the growing demand they've already got at their main hall in Bearwood, but that's not been investigated. So I would say that the evidence is actually to the contrary, that actually there is increasing demand for lettings. You look at Bearwood Community Centre, their last AGM, they're reporting increased demand, increased lettings. Merley Community Centre, similarly, are reporting increased demand and increased lettings. So I'd say the evidence is actually to the contrary, that we need more and better community provision. Paragraph 5 in your report talks about reductions in size, which are completely contrary to what we were promised at the time of the pool local plan and at the time that this planning application came to this planning committee in 2021. As my colleague said, the Section 106 agreement talks about community hall floor space, and it says means not less than 360 square metres of gross internal floor space to be provided within the community hub. Quite clear. And that's what we expected. That's what the planning committee expected when they gave this approval. So to change the definition of that to say, oh, now it includes internal and external size, to me is a completely material amendment and should come back before planning committee for approval. Shouldn't be allowed just to happen. So to reduce it from 374 square metres of internal floor space to 217 of internal floor space, a 42% cut. Is staggering, frankly. I'm not surprised that there is a proposed amendment because it's always difficult to foresee demand, and I thought there might be tweaks and changes to the design and layout. But 42% reduction in internal floor space is frankly shocking and totally unjustifiable in my view. It's also contrary to the wider BCP Council policies. Members will be aware that BCP Leisure have objected to this because it doesn't support active lifestyles. But members will also be aware that, you know, BCP Council now has its own public health director and public health team who often promote physical activity as one of the key ways of improving health and wellbeing. And I speak as the portfolio holder for health and wellbeing. And also we have policies around strengthening communities. Certainly within adult social care, we have a whole prevention policy about improving our community provision and supporting local community groups to actually improve provision, improve people's care and health and well-being. And this goes contrary to that. There is a community need for this. Camford Vale is being built now. There's around 150 to 200 homes so far. So why the
pushing this back from the 300th home to 500th. What evidence is there to support that delay? We've already had reports of antisocial behaviour in that area due to a lack of activities and things going on. And just this week, I've had conversations with the Bournemouth North Police neighbourhood policing team about the antisocial behaviour issues on the Camford Vale development around the exact site that this community hub is due to be built. The current community there and the future community, because it's 40% affordable housing within that development, you know, there's about 300 affordable homes going in there with Sovereign. They need a fully functioning community hub. They don't need a cut down half a hub, which is what this is offering. So don't let them down by approving half a hub. And finally, this will set a precedent. BCP will see more large housing applications coming forward over the coming years. Indeed, you'll be aware we've got an application for 1,200 houses on the site next door to this, the Camford Garden Village. Allowing this will set a precedent that regardless of the local plan requirements, regardless of the outline planning permission, regardless of reserved matters planning permissions given by this planning committee, developers will see their opportunity to promise the earth and then break their promises and come back later and just cut back on what they previously agreed to. Don't let this happen. Hold firm to the legal agreement, hold firm to the previous planning permission given by this committee, and refuse this application for a variation.
Thank you, all councillors. So, Ms Summers, could I ask you to put up on screen the two floor plans, the proposed and the agreed? You showed one with them next to each other so that they could be compared and contrasted.
Yeah, bear with me. I'm just waiting for it to load.
That's the one. Thank you. I hope that may be useful for the question. Maybe other people will want other visuals, but that's the one that I think is very useful. So, questions, Councillor Mark.
Right, well, I thought under building regs, and I know building regs isn't planning, but just hear me out. I thought that under building regs, if space permits for single-sex toilets as opposed to all gender-neutral toilets, then I thought that single-sex toilets had to be provided, and then gender-neutral if space still permits. Now, this applicant is now saying that the outside area is now included as part of the space. Am I right? You know, so how come they're getting away with not making room for single-sex toilets?
If I come in here, so there's two things. One is the provision of toilets of the nature is not a matter for planning. And any requirements of such would sit outside. We've got no control over or remit. And secondly, I think we need to be really careful, Chair, that we don't conflate issues which have already been determined. So that's the floor space and the number of occupations or completions to delivery. That's already been approved under that variation, the deed of variation, and that can't be revisited in this application. So what we need to focus on the application that's before us.
Could I just come in on the toilets as well, please?
Please do.
Yeah. So I think, so if we look at the previously approved plans, you've got the big entrance hall, and then you go into the male toilets or into the ladies' toilets. In this one, you've got the entrance hall, and these are separate sort of, how can I describe it? You know, when you go into a Premier Inn or something like that, am I allowed to say brands? and they've got the separate, it's not like you're going into the toilet and then there's separate cubicles, they're separate sort of rooms essentially. Do you understand what I mean? So I don't think it's the same as walking into a toilet area that's got the separate cubicles that's for males and females to use, or whatever gender. Hope that helps.
Can I just follow on? I'm aware of that. I'm aware that the cubicles do meet the requirements, but what I'm saying is, I thought that all new buildings still had to have single-sex toilets if room permits. and then and gender neutral is gender neutral as an option if room permits. But I thought that the first obligation was to provide the single sex. So if room permits, well, what my understanding is the applicant is saying that the outside is part of
this is building regs don't come under planning.
I know they don't.
Planning and just an attempt to do some culture wars nonsense. Can we get on with planning committee?
Right. Can I move on to Councillor Rampton and then it'll be Councillor.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. I think there's quite a lot to unpick, isn't there, in this application? Can I ask about the space? And I've just lost it now. The additional space, the outside space to the north is 100 square metres. What actually, so I can't see it on the plan, what actually is that space designed to be?
That to the north, that's just soft landscaping. That wasn't there before. There was a couple of trees, but now it's soft landscaping. I should have had the landscape plan up there, which would have actually. There were, yeah. So a bit of soft landscaping, a bit of border there, and then this is the fenced off area.
So it's a bit of a nonsense, really, isn't it? Talking about this outside space, because it's not really usable outside space for anything like, I don't know, a piece of green gym equipment, just say, something that could be used by the community. It's it's a bit of grass and a few bushes probably. So I'm really quite concerned about that as well. Question: if the committee were to refuse this application, what could then happen? I mean, will it still go ahead? Does it have to go ahead in its original approved format? What happens?
So firstly, I've found there is no harm with this application. There's no reason for refusal that would stand up to appeal. The likely scenario is that the applicant would appeal, and I don't think we would win. Don't know. It's planning inspectorate decision. The risk that we do have is that as it stands, as it is now, it's not deliverable because there's no one that will take over this building, and also this retail bin store needs to be increased in order for the retail space to be used by retail. And so we risk the entire community area not working, not functioning, not being built.
If it's, obviously I wasn't here for the original planning application, but surely bin storage was considered at that time. And why is it coming up now as a reason, as a possible reason to make this building so much smaller? Because this building, we keep using this red herring about a badminton court, but it is a red herring because actually it can be used for many other type. I mean, somebody mentioned pickleball and I can't think of the other one now, but there are many sports that could be used. But taking out a meeting room, and if you have a mezzanine floor, it's not just meeting space, is it? You've got storage space, which I can't see on this new application, where storage would be for, tables and chairs, for example, for community use. Or am I wrong? Is there storage space somewhere else and I'm not seeing it?
There's some storage space here compared to this storage area there.
Is that the broom cupboard? Because it doesn't look very big. I'm just thinking, look, I know Creekmore Community Centre very well, and that is a big, reasonable size hall with a high ceiling. It has a mezzanine, and that's where the storage is, and that works really well for the community. It's used 7 days a week by the community for a huge variety of activity, sports as well as playgroups and parties and so on. So I'm really. Sorry, I'm delving into debate rather than asking you questions. I realise that, but I am very concerned about this. So I'll come back in the debate. Thank you.
So I think we're going around the room in order. Councillor Shannon, Councillor Cooper, Councillor Salmon.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just have clarification with regards to the dimensions of this main hall, specifically the length, so the longest dimension, as to what that is, because it's not apparent on that diagram.
Yeah, I believe it's 18 metres from there to there, or roundabout.
And what about the
Oh,
approved?
actually, I've got it here. Yeah, so it remains as 18 metres.
And is that I just want to check this, just because one of the issues is around potential use of this hall. So the internal dimension that would be usable for sporting activity is what?
Previously approved, this usable space was 162 square metres, and this proposed usable space is 162.5 square metres.
Yep.
Approximately.
So what's the length of the usable space? That's what I want to know.
18 metres, or thereabouts, same as this one.
And so the dotted line on the left-hand drawing is showing
That is 13.4 metres, that dotted line.
So is that purely there to illustrate the size of a badminton court, not a pitch, as it stands within that hall?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Cooper.
Okay, forgive me if I move from debate to questions, but the big question is why? When you look at an evidence and community consultation, so I would like some proof that the reduction of the badminton court, the reduction in height, the removal of the mezzanine, the reduction in the number of toilets, the reduced kitchen spaces, and the lack of consultation with the community. You said you've done it. I would really like to see proof of that. And then the other thing is, we've had really good representations from the community and from councillors on this one, and it's a no-brainer. But I would like evidence. And why hasn't and this thing about the private sector being able to hold us to ransom? Nobody's considering that use. So I'd like, if we say, it's good for a nursery to consider it. I've been trustees of a nursery in Cornwall. Once a nursery gets hold of a building, they take over the use of it. It's not really fit for community purpose. And what about community ownership? Has that been considered? Or are we going to be sort of hung up by Taylor Wimpey?
Again, this isn't planning matters, but I take your point.
Yeah, but I think maybe this is the thing, planning, profit, people, what comes first sometimes? Sorry, this inflames me, this. Thank you.
Councillor Salmon.
Sorry.
Sorry. I spoke over you.
Is it okay for me to just come back on a point or two? I'm going to take that as okay. So we have to determine.
Sorry, I haven't got my mic on. I said yes.
Oh, sorry. So we have to determine what's in front of us. If you look at it objectively, what I would invite members to consider is what about this size that's proposed, which does include an office. Yes, it's a different name. It doesn't say a meeting room, but it is an office. What about this size makes it unable to be a community hall? Or indeed unable to be used for sports? What in terms of policy does it conflict with? There is no harm, there is no conflict with policy, there is no conflict with the deed of variation that has already been approved. So I would just invite members to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Salmon.
So I was so I appreciate all the work that's gone into this application, and I'm sure it's all been done properly according to process, and the fact that I get the impression nobody's particularly happy about what's in front of us. I absolutely get that's not the fault of individual officers, it's the system being very poor. I was worried by one statement though that was made by one of the officers, saying that this would automatically be overturned if we were to refuse it. I see in this application 3 very strong reasons for refusal, and I'd just like to understand how they've been addressed in the report. So for me, PP10 seems as grounds for refusal. The original application said a community centre that could be the heart of the community. Now, this is a much smaller centre. There is a massive difference between internal and external space. I mean, nobody's doing anything outside at the moment. It's too hot. I mean, this is a much smaller centre. I think that conflicts with PP10. PP26, much as there's no obligation that it has to be a badminton hall, the original application was was possible to play badminton in, and there doesn't seem to be any evidence in the officer report, and correct me if I'm wrong, that low participation is evidence of low demand. It seems to me to be evidence of low capacity rather than low demand. And then I'm not sure as well that PP37 wouldn't also be grounds for refusal. I don't understand why there's been a rollback on the sustainability criteria. I'd just like to understand how those have been addressed in the report and why those are not seen at all as not even on balance, oh no, it's all good because of deliverability, but full stop, that none of those three reasons would be sufficient to hold up if this went to appeal after refusal, because they to me seem like very strong reasons.
Yeah.
Can one of the officers
I think
help us on that?
Yeah, PP 10, Councillor Salmon, I think, was speaking there, talks about PP 10 and it not being at the heart of the community. Well, it is at the heart of the community. It is within the community centre physically. It is still more than able to function as a community hall. The external space is useful to community groups. There's nothing within the internal space that means it can't be used as a community use. In terms of PP26, badminton pitch is, which I think is badminton court actually, well, that's what it should be labelled. That was in the original approved plans, but there's no requirement for it to be badminton in anything. None of the design codes, none of the conditions. It's not addressed in the officer report. It's not addressed anywhere in terms of evidence. In terms of the evidence that's being devised at the minute, the built facilities assessment, there's no demand for badminton pitch or badminton court, sorry. So there's no evidence that would suggest a need for us to retain this as a badminton pitch. The hall remains usable as an informal sports hall as well as for community groups, like you say, amateur dramatics, choirs, and all the rest of it. In terms of PP37, that's you referred to the BREEAM. It's not a rollback. The BREEAM is very specific. The BREEAM, not that I know the technical details inside out, that's obviously outside of planning, but it refers to an entire fit out. So the criteria that needs to be met relate to an entire fit out of a building. Now, what Taylor Wimpey would provide would be the shell. It wouldn't be an entire fit out, and you've got the height as well, which still remember is 8 meters. Which basically means that very good rating is impossible to achieve. We are finding this in some applications where we are insisting on it at first and it's just not possible to achieve. So it can be dealt with via other means. We've got Part L of the building regulations, which already outside of planning, but it already reduces the carbon footprint of a lot of our buildings that are being built now. But there's other measures that the applicant could put into place, and that can be dealt with via condition, because then I can talk to our policy colleagues and make sure that everything they're providing is going to reduce the carbon footprint as much as possible. I hope that helps.
So if I can come in, Chair. The difficulty we're facing, and so I'm sitting listening to the debate he goes through, is that the the reduction of the floor space of the community hall has already been agreed under deed of variation. So if we were to refuse this application because of the size of the hall, we would have to demonstrate a good reason why we would go against that. And there's no policy requirements. And given it's been approved already, I think if an inspector were to look at this in the cold light of day, I think they would struggle to justify why they would not allow the appeal because of that. I don't know, that's the what's frustrating.
Can I take you up on that? Agreed by who? And what reduction in floor space has been agreed?
So that was agreed by the deed of variation. Francis, can you come in and provide a bit more information about that?
Yeah, no problem. I'm not sure if I've done a little slide on it. Here we go. So 31st of August 2021, section 106. This is the original section 106. It was it required 360 square meters of gross internal floor space. A deed of variation, which is not an application. It can be done under, I think it's section 106A of the Town and Country Planning Act. It was put in to change the trigger for the community hall to be occupation of the 500th dwelling rather than the 300th. And that was also the subject of an NMA, a non-material amendment, which again is not subject to consultation, and that was deemed to be non-material. The community hall was still being provided, just at a later date, and before the completion of the development. So the deed of variation, yeah, that can be done. It's a different application. It's not part of planning, and it changed the definition of the community hall to include internal. I've included this little snippet of it here, to include internal and external floor space, and that was dated 16th of October 2025. So there's nothing underhand, essentially. This is all just nuances of the planning system. But this is the situation we are left with.
So if it's been agreed and it's got the force of law now, this is a hypothetical question, but by whom was it agreed? Planning officers?
Planning officers, the legal were involved, DM manager was involved.
Yes, it was determined under delegated power.
Can you go back to the original, the comparison of the two sites, two floor plans?
Yeah.
So that I can ask the question I was going to ask.
This one?
Yeah, that's the one. I'm still puzzled because the length internal hasn't changed. The external measurements is still 18 metres, so the internal is a bit less, but the same between the two agreed, or rather the agreed and the proposed. But the width of the floors, the main hall space, is considerably more on the proposed because it hasn't got the kitchen and the store encroaching onto it. So I can't understand why the main hall space on both is 162 square metres, because on the proposed, for the main hall, it looks very different. So either one is less or one is more. Can you explain that?
I think it's just how it looks visually on the screen, because I've done the measurements from sort of this wall here to this external wall, and then side to side, and that comes out at 162 square meters. So I think it's just the way it appears on this screen.
Because I mean the one dimension has not changed. The length, the long wall has not changed, and the short wall is probably similar, but it's lost the encroachment of the kitchen and the store. It's now a rectangle, a straight rectangle rather than a funny shape on the one wall with the stairs going up. So I cannot get my head around how the square meters are the same. Either one is too big or one is too small, to my mind.
That's what it measures at. I mean, we do have the mezzanine floor, which in total makes the total
Yeah, but
overall
we're talking
space
about the
a lot
main
bigger.
hall.
You're talking about the ground floor.
The
Yeah,
ground floor, the main hall.
that's what the measurements say, 162 and 162.
I can't get my head around it. Yeah, Councillor Challoner. I'll come on to Councillor Salmon in a minute.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I've got a couple of questions now, and I'm determined not to stray into debate at this stage. I, like you, am confused about this. I'd actually like that proposed and the previously approved almost overlaid on each other, so we can actually then illustrate one of our concerns here. Because if you're saying, and they look pretty much the same to me in terms of that width, if we're then saying that same main hall space is identical on both, then quite frankly, somebody isn't measuring very well on one case or the other. So that's one point. I'd like to have some kind of illustration there that allows us to have that comparison. And secondly, and I'm going to go back to the internal dimensions, I'd like to know what the usable height is within that main hall in the proposed plan, because that will limit what can be done in that space.
So,
and sorry, can I just also say, I'd like a factual statement and not an opinion from the officer, please.
So, Francis, can you help us on that?
The factual statement is that they both measure 162 square meters. I have double checked this. I'm going to try and pull it up on screen now, but bear with me. In terms of the height, it's 8 meters, but I don't know if Ms. Hocken from Taylor Wimpey is there, so maybe she could confirm that.
She's here, but whether she can confirm, I'm looking at her. She can't answer it. She doesn't know. You can't come to the mic because I can't really hear what you're saying, and certainly other people online won't be able to.
Sorry, there was the slide that had the elevation side by side, and that provided the height details there. So it's gone from 11 meters in the top height to 8 meters.
And it is still an internal pitched ceiling, or is it flat?
But I can double check. I don't know off the top of my head.
Because that makes a lot of difference whether it's pitched or flat internally.
Can I reiterate then? I want to know from either the applicant or the officer what the usable space is in terms of that headroom, because that limits what can be done in that space. And I don't want to have to go back to my GCSE trigonometry to work it out.
Can you just bear with me? I'm pulling up the plans now. Oh, sorry, I'm trying to do the measurements so that you can see them on the screen. So where is it? Yeah, length remains the same. I mean, obviously, it's going to be, like you say, with walls, you've got a little bit less inside. In terms of the height of the pitch of the roof is 8 meters. And this is the floor plans I have. And it's a pitched roof here.
Francis, we can't see your floor plans.
Oh, sorry. Right, sorry, right, so length is 18, as I said. You got a little bit less because of the walls, obviously. We've got 8 meters in height being proposed. We've got a pitched roof being proposed. On the floor plans, there's no mezzanine floor, so I can assume that the pitched roof is still pitched inside. And I was measuring the internal space, wasn't I? Yeah, 162.
Francis, can you just do a width measurement on the proposed
What, sorry?
width? So from one wall to the
Oh, width.
next.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, internal I've got here is 15. When I measure the plans from from there to there, it comes out at 15, just over 15.
And what's it the other direction, Francis?
The other direction. So to the kitchen area.
No, just the usable hall area.
Yeah, the usable hall area to sort of like the kitchen wall is 11.3 from the internal wall. So from the internal side of the external wall down to the kitchen area, it's 11.3.
On the proposed or the approved?
On the proposed. I don't have the approved in front of me. So I make that 15 times 11.3. Yeah, actually 169. So yeah, probably because I'm not zoomed in enough, it's probably not quite as accurate as when I measured it before.
I'm just wondering if on the approved, the internal measurement measures to basically where the stairs are, that wall there. But of course, there's quite a bit of floor space taken up by the kitchen and things. But I'm only speculating, I can't say. The question I would also have is actually where was the mezzanine? Was it over part of the main hall or is it over the kitchen area? Or
Over
what?
the kitchen area.
Sorry?
It was over the kitchen area.
Thank you. So, going back to the questions, I think Councillor Salmon had got his hand up last.
Yeah, so I just wanted to return to this variation of deed. So I understand that there is a document that has been agreed or whatever. I'm going to explain it in layman's terms because that's the only way I think. But it's been signed off by the council already, where we've gone, internal, external space are essentially the same when it comes to this application. I guess the developer already had an eye at that point to look to water down what they were offering. Even though that has been agreed, though, can we not still raise an objection on PP10 based on the fact that it is smaller? I get that it's located in the heart area, but if it was just a single shed, that would still be in the heart area, but wouldn't function as a heart because it would be, obviously functionally too small. I feel like we could, as a committee, make the subjective decision that it is not going to function as that heart and it would conflict with PP10. And then I just also wanted to check, because this is the local plan and we're talking about housing, are we being asked to also take into account the tilted balance here in any way? Because is it, if we don't scrap this, then you don't get any of your houses?
To confirm, not so we don't need to apply a tilted balance, and bear with me, just having a look at the policy wording for your request, and my interpretation is what you're putting forward potentially is refused based on PP10 and the layout and configuration of the facilities within the hub. Okay.
Yeah, I think so you would be saying it's not it doesn't form the heart of the community to support the creation of a new community because it is reduced in size. But again, what evidence have you got to say that that size is not appropriate?
I think I mean, that's a subjective question, isn't it? That's why we sit on this committee. And it would be down to, if we feel we can evidence, yep, the building is now too small, you can't play badminton there, we've got the objection from BCP Leisure and all of that. I think that's where there's grey area and room for debate. But that would be one example of a valid reason, wouldn't it? That the inspector may like, the inspector may not like it.
So can we go back to the deed of variation that's been agreed without any of us knowing anything about it? To what the square meterage that's been agreed? Because I can't actually see it on there.
It's 360 square meters.
Oh,
that
is that
remains
bit?
the same, but it refers to internal and external space no less than 360 square meters. So even if we discount this one, the one to the north, that's what's that? 366 square meters. It still accords with that.
So the square meterage includes, as you say, the external space, but it also includes all the kitchen, toilets, offices, that sort of thing, store.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Sorry, Francis, can you bring up your policy PP10 again?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Right. Is your question part of this, Councillor Rampton?
Possibly. I'm not sure really.
I mean, you're not introducing another complete area of.
I suppose, just to clarify, a deed of variation was drawn up and signed off by officers without any involvement of the ward councillors or the community. Is that correct?
That's correct. It was delegated.
That is correct. Okay. Well, I find that really quite disturbing. But my question was, in terms of the mezzanine floor, even with a reduced height, is there any ability to put even a part of a mezzanine floor, so enough for storage or a meeting room or something, within the footprint of the building?
I don't know. I don't know that. We've just got to assess the scheme that's in front of us.
Yes, we have to assess this, what is presented to us. I mean, we're not able, or I mean, in the course of discussion, it obviously comes up, but we're not able to say we would approve this if you do this. I mean, that we couldn't have that sort of condition to say if you provide,
My question was more about, given the height, and I don't know what the standards are for heights of ceilings and mezzanines, but within the height there, is it a possibility to have a mezzanine floor at any part of the building? If it is it's still a pitch roof.
Again, I couldn't.
I mean, I would assume it could be at the ends, at the highest pitch of the pitch, but that would, reduce the height of that area. So, I mean, I'm not a builder, I'm not a planner, so I don't know. Councillor Cooper, let's get off this a bit.
Yeah, we're going chasing our tails. To me, there's a couple of questions that I don't think have been answered yet. One is the deed of variation that seems to be done by fleet of foot and not involving the community. I'd like to know what our obligations are around there, about how we should work with the community on something so significant with this. There's been comment about the private sector not being willing to take on the hall, and I wonder if there's been any conversations at all and would evidence that with the local community, the local councillors, the people that we've got sat here today. Has there been any consultation with them whatsoever? And if there has, when, and numbers, if you like. Thank you.
Again, I don't think that's actually something for us as a committee, although we are, but
I know we're not supposed to be objective, but subjective. I mean, but this raises a lot of really important issues for the council and the way it's going to work in the future.
I agree, but unfortunately, I think a lot of them are not part of this.
Well, we need to reflect on that and work on it. Thank you.
Sorry, I think we might be waiting for a response.
So you're waiting response for the question
About the
regarding
deed of variation.
And about community, well, it was more about community involvement, wasn't it, Councillor Cooper?
It's the process. You know, a planning permission gets approved, right, around housing, and then a community facility, which is going to be needed with such a large housing estate, and then suddenly a deed of variation comes in by fleet of foot and by stealth, it seems, and decisions are made without making that a transparent and open process for the community that will be impacted on changes. So that's what I'm kind of concerned about, albeit a little bit subjective, I suppose. It's not, it's reality.
Yeah, outside of standard consultation processes, like we normally find with planning applications, there's no requirement to engage with communities about any section 106A application. And it's not classed as a planning application, so it couldn't have been called into committee either.
Councillor Challoner.
I'd just like to add the comment that just because you don't have to do something doesn't mean that we shouldn't be doing it. Because in this instance, certainly, and I'm sure it happens other times, there's an absolute lack of engagement with the community in terms of what this means to them going forward. And I actually feel that the council is failing here in not doing this engagement, and it's hiding behind the law by saying we don't have to. But because you don't have to doesn't mean that you shouldn't. You know, we shouldn't always aim for the minimum standard. We should be aiming for actually what's best for our communities.
I think our views, most of us have expressed views along those lines. I hope they will be taken on board, but it's not part of what we've got to do today. So I think we need to move on to finishing off any more questions, but then get on to debate. I suspect we've probably had all the questions we're going to need to ask. So it's time to move on to debate. Our points have been, I hope, noted for future reference, but I don't think at this stage it's a it's a fait accompli, and I think we've got to go from where we are. The deed of, the changes having been agreed, even though we're not happy about the process, we've got to go from there on. Yeah?
Could I just come in and reassure everyone that the procedure was carried out in the correct manner? Totally take on board your points that we maybe need to change that procedure, and I actually think it might have actually changed since this was undertaken. So we are actually devising a procedure note that actually, I think, will address your concerns that have been raised today. But yeah, the deed of variation is, regardless of opinions, that is the legal document that we're working to today. And so, we need to consider that.
Thank you. So I suggest we move on to debate, and I'm going to start because when I saw, sorry, Francis, can you put the comparison of floor plans up again? Thank you. Because when I saw this comparison, I started wearing my glasses, having run a guide unit for many, many, many years, and thinking of using a hall for that purpose, because that's the sort of purpose, scouts, guides, brownies, youth group, whatever, that could be interested in using this hall. And I thought, well, the floor space looks much more usable. To me, it looks bigger, although I know we're told the measurements are the same, but it looks bigger. Having some outside space is useful. There are some things, even in a comparatively small space, you could do. So wearing that hat, it looks quite useful. Now, I grant you, lots of other groups will be wanting it for lots of other things. And particularly if catering comes into it, having a much smaller kitchen is not good. But as I say, wearing my guider hat, the proposed looks very useful, but there will be so many other uses that might not find it useful. And I can take the play groups, for instance, to have a bit of outside space that they can go out and, you know, have fresh air. Even though it's not huge, they've got a bit of space. But other things, obviously, as I say, if you're wanting to do catering, having a much smaller kitchen is not good. But I think, you know, there are pros and cons, in other words, to given what we have now got to work to. So anyway, other comments. Councillor Martin.
Thank you. Yeah, I think if we were to not approve this this application, we'd be looking at showing why it's less useful for the community. You know, it's not really forming the heart of the community. I think I take your point about the Girl Guides, but there are lots of uses of a hall. I've just jotted down some notes. The smaller kitchen space and storage space makes it less appealing. Makes it less appealing for regular groups that want to meet there, such as nursery groups, for example, or mums and toddlers groups, parent and toddlers it now is today. And the smaller kitchens you might hire it out for children's birthday parties, other parties, youth groups, things like that. It's the kitchen is a lot smaller for that reason. There's the height as well. The height permits a lot of ventilation. I take my grandson to a parent and toddler group on a Monday morning, and it's a huge hall. The community centre is Muddyford Woods, and it's very, very high up. And I think that helps to keep it cooler. You know, when it's hot weather, I noticed that although there's no aircon, it's a protected space in there, so it makes it more useful. So if you're going to do sports and you're going to be running about and getting all sweaty, even in winter time, if you've got a lower ceiling, you're gonna struggle a little bit more and perhaps not prefer to use that. So that's another thing. Contrary to you're saying it's just a culture war, I'm going to say about the toilets again. In a YouGov poll, 81% of women don't like to use gender-neutral toilets. So that's going to have a huge impact on people wanting to hire and use the hall for, you know, social occasions and things. And we're talking about something that's the heart of the community here. There's no baby changing facilities included, which is there again for if you've got if you wanted a children's party, people will have babies and toddlers that need changing. The other thing is what I still don't get is the outside is useful probably to a Girl Guide unit that just wants to pop out there and pop a tent up or something, but it's not really it's no different to a bit of park space. I can't understand why they're saying that, oh, you've got better outside space now. It's just a bit of grass and shrubs. And basically, I would be against this because I don't think it should be allowed. I don't think that a developer should offer one building and then change it for another that's of less use to the community.
Councillor Rampton.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I do agree with many of the comments my colleague Councillor Martin has already said. It's a community hall. The name says it all. It has to be what the community want and what they need, and it has to be for everybody, and it has to include people with disabilities who would really struggle in a little, you know, tiny kitchen. And I think there is a disabled loo on there. I can't quite see, but in my view, any new building like that should actually have a changing place toilet put in. I know it takes up more room, but it is what people need nowadays. I think it isn't compliant with PP10, which says ensure flexibility to meet evolving needs of the community, and I don't think it does have that. It's going to be built to a size, and there's nowhere to extend it. At least if it had the higher roof, you have got that flexibility of having extra space upstairs. So I will find it very hard to support this application. Thank you.
Councillor Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I don't want to sound too grumpy, but this is just yet another example of something being offered and then being changed. Now, I know that's acceptable. However, the community were offered something and they're now being told they're going to have something else. I'm still not happy about this proposed reduction in height for a number of reasons. One, as Councillor Rampton's already said, it restricts what the potential uses are there. BCP Leisure have said they're concerned about the loss of that space as badminton. Badminton in England have actually said that this area has lower than average badminton participation, and yet, as a demographic, we are on average more active. Now, that suggests that I think that the potential is there to have more people playing badminton and doing other sports within that space. The length itself is still a tight fit, but let's at least give them the opportunity to do that. And I think looking at the building as a whole, that revised footprint and the space within it and the usage within it, I think the initial approved case is much more commercially attractive to people. I think it's got much more flexibility. And I think the only advantage of now saying, oh, we've got a bigger hall, that's going to be better for maybe someone to come in and operate it. No, it's cheaper. And I think that's the only reason it's being done. And I think we should stick to our guns here and reject this revision, because actually the community is saying otherwise, and we should listen to them and be guided by them, and actually say to the developer, you've had some wriggle room already. You know, you've had your 300 to 500 housing occupations as your wriggle room. At least give the community what you promised them in the first place.
Before we go any further, can I ask, if we were to refuse this, does it mean that, which would normally be the case, it reverts to the approved plans, and it's that would be implemented short of having another application for some sort of change, or because of the deed of variation, does that mean that the approved plans are no longer relevant?
No, sorry.
Carry on, Ms. Summers.
Sorry, it's really difficult doing this online. So if we were to refuse it, it would revert to the approved plans. The deed of variation would still be in place, which means that the 360 square meters refers to internal and external, but the approved plans remain the approved plans.
Thank you. Any more, Councillor Salmon?
So I think we're all of one mind. I'd like to propose this for refusal. I'd like to do so for 3 reasons. The proposed variation would materially reduce the scale, quality and usefulness of the approved community hub. The smaller internal hall, lower roof and removal of internal features would leave a less capable building. Therefore, it would not properly deliver the community hub required to form the heart of a new community, contrary to PP10. I would also add, so that's reason number 1. Reason number 2, proposal would reduce the quality and range of indoor sports and recreation opportunities in the community hub by removing the badminton capable hall arrangement and lowering the roof. The applicant has not provided robust evidence that provision is surplus to need, nor shown equivalent or better replacement provision. Therefore, it's contrary to PP26. And then finally, on PP37, I'd say the proposal would remove the requirement for the non-residential floor space to achieve BREEAM, very good, contrary to PP37. Proposed replacement condition does not secure a clear, measurable or enforceable equivalent energy standard for energy efficiency, renewable use and so on. And so I refuse it under those 3 grounds. I think they're all valid. I just need to get on and deliver what they said they would deliver.
Thank you. Have we got a seconder? Councillor Challoner, you're seconding. Thank you. Any further comments, or shall we move straight to the vote? Move to the vote. Okay, we've got a motion to refuse this for the very clear reasons that Councillor Salmon has outlined. It's been seconded by Councillor Challoner, so we move to the vote. If so, I'll do it in the normal way. So I will ask, first of all, if you want to approve these plans, will you vote now?
Sorry, there's a move on the table to refuse it. Do we need to vote on the move?
Right, okay. So if you wish to refuse these plans, vote now.
That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 unanimous in favour of refusing.
So we don't need to go on to abstentions and approvals. So that is very clearly unanimously refused. We've had clear reasons from Councillor Salmon. Have officers been able to record those?
Yes. I'm not that person making notes. Do you have them?
Do you want me to email you?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Yeah, is it okay if I just confirm reason for refusal? I get reason for refusal.
Francis.
Yeah.
The decision's already made, so.
Oh no, sorry. I just mean could I just for the wording?
Oh no,
is it possible?
it's going to be sent to me.
All right, brilliant. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. And we just now have the appeals report at item 7.
Yes, very quickly, and Chair, you'll like this one, as this is an application which was originally recommended for approval officers, and which members overturned. And the inspector has also dismissed the appeal. Bear with me. So, oh God, sorry.
Are you talking about Chattersley Wood Road?
I am. Chattersley Wood Road.
Chattersley Wood Road.
Yeah, so.
Which we.
Yeah, so.
Again, in your board.
So there were 2 reasons for refusal. One was based on character and one was based on impact on residential amenity. If members, if you recall, this is the scheme where there was an of the back to front, one behind the other, tandem, 2 dwellings, and I want to separate them. So the inspector did not agree that with the committee's reason for refusal with regards to character. I found it to be acceptable in that regard. And whilst I didn't completely agree with the reasons for refusal in terms of amenity presented by members, the inspector was concerned about the additional height, scale and proximity of the new building to the rear courtyard of number 5A. And was concerned it would create an overbearing and oppressive presence when viewed for that main garden area. And for that reason, the application was dismissed. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. So, meeting closed. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.